Hey YouTube. Um this is my video where I'm just gonna share my story in dealing with my cancer as a 28-year-old. Um I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing about it. People with cancer, without cancer. It's always, I think it's very unique when a young person gets cancer. It's very rare, obviously, and so this video is just gonna be me talking about it and about my story so far. So, I live in Los Angeles, and for about 7 months before I knew I had cancer, I had a primary symptom of itching, like incredible skin itching. Now, it's whenever I describe the symptom to someone, I almost don't like even calling it itching, because to anyone who hasn't felt this kind of itching, the word itching doesn't do it justice. It's so much more than just itching. It was like, and it is still like okay, this is very dramatic what I'm gonna say, but imagine the worst poison ivy, bug bite, something like that you've ever had. Multiply it by 20 million, and then imagine on top of that the sensation of bees stinging you from the inside of your skin, and that gets you like close to the kind of itching that I was feeling for about 6 months. It would start I'm an Uber driver. I used to do it a lot more than I'm doing now, but I would come home from Uber, I would take off my clothes to put on my pajamas to go to bed. Yes, I wear pajamas. Okay. I think they're comfortable. Anyway, getting sidetracked. And as soon as I took my pants off, my thighs would be itching. There'd be this burning itch on my thighs. And I couldn't stop. Because, right, when you get an itch, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to just stop itching. People, making itching gets it worse, but I couldn't. It was too much. So, what'd I do? Go to my doctor. My doctor after a long time of itching, I was getting these bumps on my skin. It looked like bug bites. It looked very similar to what bug bites are. So I was thinking I had, something weird was happening. And I was getting them on my legs. And if you have bites on your legs, a lot of times it's fleas. So I went to my doctor, and he looked at it. And he gave me a look that said he had no idea what the fuck it was. And he said it's likely something called scabies. Now, scabies, if you've never heard of it, is a really awful condition in of itself. It's like lice, but instead of in your head, it's under your skin, over your whole body. So you can imagine what that is. So I was diagnosed as having scabies, and given what you do is you get this cream called permethrin, and you apply it all over your body, and for one night, and you wash it off in the morning, and then you wash every single thing in your apartment on hot water, or your house in hot water, or you leave your apartment for 4 days, because then all the mites that are in there will die, and then you come back. And so I did this. Not leaving my apartment, but I washed everything and I put the cream on them. And it didn't work. And this was frustrating. But I went back to my doctor. And I got the cream again. And I tried it again. I thought I hadn't cleaned well enough. It didn't work again. Okay. I gotta summarize here because these videos on YouTube can't be that long. But okay, so he then, gave me a referral to a dermatologist, and then I got a referral to like an allergist for allergies, and then I got a referral to another dermatologist and another just general doctor. And over the course of 6 months of this, I saw about 6 different doctors, and they all gave me diagnoses of having, besides scabies, because some of them didn't think I had scabies at all, but they thought I got diagnosed as having dry skin, as having a dust mite allergy, as having eczema, as having, I got the impression from a lot of them that they thought I was just like a hypochondriac. Everything under the sun except the itching. By the way, as you can see, this is my first YouTube video. I have my camera phone propped up and it keeps falling, and I've tried 7,000 times to make it not fall, but this is the first time making it. If you have any suggestions on how to make better quality YouTube videos, please post them in the comments below, because I'd love to hear them, because it's kind of driving me nuts. Always having to adjust the phone, and then when I do that, I get out of the flow of what I'm talking about in the first place. Anyway, so I saw 7 different internists or 6 or 7 over the course of 6 months. Meanwhile, every night is torture as I'm itching. I'm itching during the day too, but it gets much worse at night. That's another reason why I thought it was scabies, because scabies as a symptom gets worse at night. I can't sleep a lot of the night. I'm getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep. I'm taking Benadryl, like 2 Benadryl every single night, which helps a tiny bit, but not really. I was then prescribed really ultra strong antihistamine like Benadryl called Atarax or hydroxyzine, which I took, and that helped a little more, but still not really. So I'm going nuts, really nuts. In the end, me and my girlfriend decided we said, okay, it's scabies. We just didn't clean well enough. We spent $400 on like every single industrial hospital grade cleaning product we could find on Amazon. And we're like, okay, we're just not being strict enough about cleaning afterwards. So we spent all that money. It got delivered. That night we went to the movies. We were seeing the Steve Jobs movie. In the middle of the movie, the itching got to an extreme that I almost wanted to pass out. And I had this gut instinct inside of me just to go to the ER. And I did. And I've been thinking about this for 6 months, but at the same time, I was like, you're going to go to the ER for itching? What the fuck? You're going to go to the emergency room for itching. They're going to think you're just they're going to think you're a hypochondriac, obviously. And also, it cost me $400 with my insurance anyway, because I have shitty insurance. So I go to the ER, Cedars-Sinai, which is like the best hospital ever in Los Angeles, and they, very, very hard to talk about this. They took me in. The first doctor was like, basically said what I thought he was going to say. He said, you're itching, I can't really do a lot for you. This is an ER. If you have some serious skin, there's a skin condition that's really serious called Steven Johnson syndrome, where your like skin, this is gross, but it kind of starts to come off. That's like a skin condition they can treat in the ER, which I didn't have. And they were like, we can't really treat you because you're itching. But then one of the other doctors, fortunately, who basically saved my life, heard this other symptom that I started to have, which was a cough. And because of that cough, she ordered a chest x-ray, and that's when they found 2 masses in my chest. The whole, basically, left side of my chest were 2 large tumors. And that moment, when the doctor came in and told me that, changed my life. I'll never forget that, the doctor coming in the moment and saying, you have 2 masses. Actually, they didn't even say 2, they said 1 mass. But then even though the CT scans show 2, saying you have a mass in your chest, and they said it looks like a lymphoma. And I'll never forget that, ever. And then I was hospitalized. Obviously, they took me in immediately, and they had to biopsy it. When you have a mass, all the doctors there are very experienced, so they can look at the CAT scan and they know it's lymphoma, but they got to make sure, so they have to actually get a piece of it. And it's hard. The way they do that is a surgery called a bronchoscopy, where they literally go into your chest, and that's what this pretty thing scar is from. So they go in your chest, they cut a piece of it out, and they have a little camera also that they put in there to look around. And then I was in the hospital for a few more days, and then I went home. And then it took a long time. They said it was only going to take about 4 to 5 days for them to come back with the results, but it took about 10 days. Now, during this time, I researched lymphoma, because I didn't really know, the average person doesn't really know a lot about lymphoma. Lymphoma is a cancer it's a blood cancer, and it's specifically of your lymph nodes. Your lymph nodes are the things in your blood that's responsible for getting rid of toxins. It's kind of like your blood's recycling system it's continually getting rid of toxins in your blood. And cancer in the lymph nodes makes them grow and grow and grow and grow. As cancer, that's what cancer does. Cancer is by definition just uncontrolled cell growth. And you get these masses. Now, within lymphoma, there's 2 different types of lymphoma. There's Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that's the kind that I think a lot of people just have heard of. It's kind of people have just heard of the term Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then there's a Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is lymphoma also. Now, most lymphomas are Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that's because Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's like a term for a lot of different kinds. Hodgkin's lymphoma is the other kind, and that's only a few people have that. However, Hodgkin's lymphoma is the kind of lymphoma that usually A, makes you itch, and B, is known notoriously to affect people in their 20s like myself. So that's what we thought I had. We just assumed, he's itching, he's in his 20s, it's in his chest, it's usually in your chest, Hodgkin's lymphoma. But because this biopsy that I got was taking 7 days or longer to come back, I started thinking, okay, it's maybe not, it's something else. Sure enough, I get a call from my oncologist. An oncologist is a term for a doctor who specializes in tumors. And he called me and said, you have a lymphoma that's not Hodgkin's and it's not non-Hodgkin's. It's this gray zone. So again, this scares me as well because I hadn't heard of this gray zone in my online research. Gray zone, it's called gray zone. Primary mediastinal gray zone lymphoma is what it's called. Mediastinal because it's in the mediastinal, the chest cavity. And gray zone because it's in this gray zone between the 2 types of lymphoma, Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's. So that's what I have. And I said to him, okay, how is it treated? And he said, it's treated the same way as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I said, okay. And then I did a little research on gray zone lymphoma. And it is so rare that at any given moment, less than 500 people in the United States have it. It's so rare. However, it usually is treated, like my doctor said, like non-Hodgkin's, like standard non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is treated. It's treated in the same way. And it has about the same success rate, which is about 65 to 70%, but I'm a little higher because I'm younger. And the only difference is that it has a higher tendency that after your treatment to come back later. So that sucks. Having cancer sucks too. So there's both. There's nothing I can really do about it. Okay. So the treatment. Lymphoma is one of the most heavy chemotherapy regimens that you can be on. When people think of chemotherapy, they think of somebody going and getting drugs for like maybe an hour every other week or 2 hours every other week. That's the kind of chemotherapy you get if you have like breast cancer, for example. Although if you have breast cancer, you usually have to get surgery on top of it, which fortunately I don't have to have. So for my lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you have to get treated with about 5 or 6 different chemotherapy drugs. And 3 of them you get infused, or like it's continually going into you for 5 days straight. And you take home with you a pump that's like an IV thing in a hospital that, like, while you sleep in your own apartment, is continually putting drugs into you, like for 5 days straight. So chemotherapy regimens have acronyms. So mine is called EPOCH-R. It's EPOCH-R. And that stands for the 5 drugs that I'm taking. Okay. Now about treatment and how I got treated and what I did about treatment. I knew that based on my crappy, shitty Health Net insurance, don't ever get Health Net, by the way, they're awful. Also, it's covered California. That's a whole other animal. So based on this, I was thinking I was probably gonna end up having to pay about 100, 200K for my treatment. And I'm a starving actor, so that's a joke. So instead of that, I went online, and also I didn't want to get treated at this clinic because, like I said, my gray zone lymphoma is so rare that my doctor had never treated it. He was just following protocol, which is you treat it the same way as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I wanted someone who had treated it before, obviously. So I went online. I found, actually someone recommended me, these 2 doctors, who are the doctors who actually coined the term gray zone lymphoma and who came up with the treatment for it. And I emailed them. And they're 2 doctors who work at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. I emailed them, and they immediately emailed me back that said, come get treated here. That's what you should do. That's the best thing for you. Come to us, and we'll treat you. And if you're on one of our studies, it's free. We'll pay for everything. We'll pay for the chemo drugs. We'll pay for your airfare back and forth from Los Angeles every 3 weeks. We'll pay for your hotel here. We'll give you some stipend for food. Everything will be covered. And we are the top authorities, or the only authorities in the world on gray zone lymphoma. So I said yes. And that's where I'm getting treated. Every 3 weeks I fly out to from Los Angeles to Bethesda, Maryland, and I get treated. So I do that, and I had my first round of chemotherapy drugs a week ago, or a couple weeks ago, and I had all the kind of mini procedures you have to get done beforehand. Ugh. You have to get this one procedure done where they have to test when you have lymphoma or a blood cancer. They have to know like how prolong, how they say stages, but how far advanced it is. And the farthest advanced it can get is if it's in your bone marrow, which is the stuff inside your bones. So they have to get a sample of your bone marrow, and they do a thing called a bone marrow biopsy to get it. So this is a procedure where you're awake. They don't put you out for this. You're awake during this. They just use like Novocaine, like a shot of Novocaine, basically, like local anesthesia. Where on my hip, they literally drill into your bones and with a special needle, put a needle into your bone and suck out the marrow. And then they also, afterwards, break off a small piece of your bone. So, this procedure I actually got done first. I got it done with my oncologist in LA. And it was so painful that I couldn't get through it. And he had to stop halfway. And I was limping around for the next 3 days. So then I went to the National Institute of Health with my treatment that I'm getting. They call it NIH. It's the abbreviation for it, NIH. And they have a guy there whose basically only job is to do bone marrow biopsies. He's the man. His name is, I want to say George, yeah. He's the man. Because he did it, and even though it still was like painful, he's like so good at it that it was only painful for like split seconds at certain times, and there was no limping afterwards or anything. But it still is like the most painful like procedure I've ever had done. And if you ever have to get a bone marrow biopsy, just take a lot of like anti-anxiety drugs beforehand and you'll be fine. Okay, but that being said, so I got the bone marrow biopsy. Then after that, I had to get you have to get an insertion for put the chemotherapy drugs into you. So this is called a PICC line, which is like a direct. It's like a catheter, which is like a tiny tube that goes from the point of entry on your body, like into your heart. So normally you get PICC lines in your arm, but recently I was talking to the guy there who did it to me. They've found that that arm veins are much more likely to get clogged up. This is really gross, but clogged up from the chemotherapy drugs, and people start reporting pain in the arms. So they've started doing them now. This is gross, but whatever. This whole thing is gross and fucked up. Through the neck. So right here, this scar, that's where they actually put the tube through my neck. And actually, I believe it. He said that was actually less of a painful procedure. The only pain you feel there with that was when they put the shot of Novocaine in, but it's a split second, and after the bone marrow biopsy that was fine. There was nothing. It wasn't nothing, but it wasn't that bad. Okay. There's just so much to this story. So I get the drugs. I start doing the continuous infusion of the drugs. And yeah. Immediately, the biggest symptom that I had and that I still have, kind of, is like, not really nausea, but like indigestion. A lot of indigestion. A lot of like kind of biley feeling at the back of my throat, which sucks, but so I take like Zantac for that, which helps. Then when I got home after the cycle's over and they took the thing out and I got home, then I started feeling like symptoms like mild nausea, just kind of constant. But they give you really great drugs to combat that, which they have now. Like this whole kind of thing people hear about that people get chemotherapy and they're throwing up for days is kind of old because they have these drugs now that they give you like that make you not throw up basically. So that was fine. But I did like this whole time since chemotherapy, I've had to be extremely careful with my diet and what I eat. Like extremely careful. Anyway, because you can just, if you eat healthy, you feel fine. But if you don't, like if I were to right now go out and eat like a pastrami sandwich, it would be bad news. So you got to eat really healthy. The worst thing that's happened since chemotherapy started is this. Again, this is really gross. The whole thing is gross. So, one of the drugs they gave me as part of my chemotherapy regimen is called vincristine. Vincristine was like one of the first chemotherapy drugs ever developed in the 60s. It was one of the first drugs they developed that it's actually a miracle drug because what was so hard, I've read books about like cancer, what was so hard about treating cancer is how do you create a drug that just kills the cancer cells and doesn't kill the healthy cells in your body? Vincristine was one of the first drugs they ever found that like a tweezer goes into your body and just kills cells that divide and multiply at an extreme rate. So that's what cancer is. So it just kills those cells. Now, there are other cells, some cells in your body that divide in extreme at a huge rate, i.e. hair, which is why you lose your hair. The lining on your stomach, which is why you get nauseous. And your reproductive system, your sperm, which is why sometimes you can become sterile. But anyway, one of the side effects of vincristine is like constipation, and it's like severe constipation. So the worst thing that happened to me a couple days ago where I got so constipated that I was writhing on the floor of my apartment in agony, essentially, and crying from pain. So I had to go to the ER, and they had given me like every drug available for constipation, which I'd already taken. I'd already taken every single thing on the market, essentially, for constipation, and nothing had worked. Including like, if you ever have constipation, the thing that's supposed to just do it as a last resort is something called magnesium citrate. And I drank a ton of that stuff, and that didn't work either. So this is why I knew I had to go to the ER. So I go to the ER, and and also, you can't give yourself, like, this is gross, but things like suppositories and enemas, for example, when you have cancer during certain times, because your immune system is compromised to a degree during a certain period, and so that kind of stuff can mess you up if you have a weakened immune system. So I couldn't do enemas or something like that. So I go to the ER, and they gave me a gallon to drink of this stuff called Go Lightly, which is what they give to people who have like colonoscopies, where so that you can just clear out everything down there. But you have to drink a gallon of this stuff, and this stuff does not taste good. It tastes not horrible, but ugh. So I did it. Oh, and then they also gave me to mix with it another bottle of magnesium citrate. You know how you're not supposed to mix alcohol? Well, kind of like this too. So anyway, projectile vomiting occurred about 3/4 of the way through, which sucked. But it did have the effect of totally clearing out my bowels. And I kept clearing them out for about a day afterwards. It's incredibly strong stuff. Okay, so this was the worst experience dealing with cancer chemotherapy, and it's see, nausea and vomiting gets all of the like rap for being the worst symptom, but it's really not. The worst symptom, I think, is this constipation thing. But I got it much worse than 90% of people who have chemotherapy get. So, the next cycle, I'm going to have to take a lot more of stuff, or they're going to have to decrease the vincristine or something, because I can't just go to the hospital every single time, obviously. So, and I guess that's where I am. That's where I am now. At the hospital, though, I broke down. I was sobbing for a long time. First because of the pain, but then because it was just like, I'm 28 and I have cancer, and this is not supposed to happen, It's not supposed to happen, and like, it's not on my path, if that makes sense. And I feel like I'm supposed to be a man in his like prime, and I'm just kind of losing time, and I can't work. I don't really have like any money. So I broke down. I'd been kind of hiding my emotions a lot, and I just lost it entirely. I think the biggest question that's been on my mind this whole time is why? Like, why did this happen? Why did I get this? With other cancers like lung cancer, people know if you smoke cigarettes, you get lung cancer. It's clear. With some other cancers, they know if you eat shitty foods, you get stomach cancer or whatever. That's been proven. Nobody knows why you get lymphoma. No one knows. They have ideas. They say it's associated with the Epstein-Barr virus, which is what causes mononucleosis, for example. They think if you're exposed to large degrees of radiation, that could have something to do with it, but they don't really know. It's totally random. It's like someone rolls a dice and goes, boom, you have cancer. And then especially with mine, the gray zone lymphoma, that's even more random. That's like as random as if you were to take everyone in the world and just say, but if everyone in the world was somebody with lymphoma already, the chances of having gray zone are like the chances of having cancer within that environment of everyone else already having just regular lymphoma. I mean, it's so rare. It's like winning the lottery from hell, basically. And it's baffling. I just want to know why. And there is no why. It's just totally fucked up and random. And that's just it. And that's it. Although one of the most positive things about this, I have to say, is, I've kind of shaved my head in preparation for the whole hair losing thing, which is supposed to happen any day now. And I kind of like this look. I think I dig it. I think I'm going to keep it. That's it. I hope no one out there who's watching this ever gets cancer and has to deal with this, ever. Or especially as a young person. I've read stories, though, of, other young people in the world who have dealt with it. People younger than me, people in their teens who get cancer. I had never met anyone personally at my age or younger who had cancer, so it was hard for me to even see that, but it happens. And it's fucked up, but people get through it. My cancer has a very good prognosis outcome. Unlike, like, say, lung cancer, where you're really kind of screwed if you have lung cancer. It's sad to say. I don't, it sounds bad me saying you're screwed, but you're not necessarily screwed, but the point is lung cancer is a very strong killer, and lymphoma is very not so much. So nowadays they can treat it really well. So in conclusion, I have 5 more cycles that I have to go and get this medicine. But even after this first cycle, there's been improvements to my cancer symptoms, which is a miracle. My cough has almost gone away. The itching, unfortunately, is still there, but it is nowhere near as intense. Well, that's not necessarily true. I wish it was. There you go. But it's not. It like before it was a 10. Now it's maybe an 8. But that's still something. Like after 6 months, anything is amazing. So I'm hoping after the next treatment of medicine, it'll go away. I would love to hear in the comments below other cancer stories, people dealing with lymphoma, young people who have cancer, parents of young people who have had cancer, maybe even anyone who's being treated at the National Institute of Health like I am in a study. Anything like that. People telling me they fucking hate my haircut. That would be interesting too. People telling me to fuck off anyway. That's cool. Well, it's not cool, but overly douchebaggery comments is what makes YouTube. So, yeah, that's it. My name's Ben, by the way. Okay, YouTube.